This is something that I have never told anyone before. Partly because of the nature of my work, and I know how vicious the paparazzi can be, and partly because I still don't understand the events that I shall be shortly describing. It happened in between a couple of film shoots. I was, to all intents and purposes, on vacation in a villa in Sicily, though I could be called back for a line read or a script evaluation any given day. Yes, I am a Hollywood actor, and a pretty recognizable one too. The villa, although very well maintained and equipped with modern furnishings, was in fact very old. On my first day, a local tour guide mentioned something about it being built in the early 18th century, almost 300 years ago. I have never been able to sleep very well while shooting for a film, and was thus looking forward to a few days of rather uninterrupted sleep. Fate, however, had other plans. Around the third day, I was woken up by a whispery voice. "Thomas, wake up. Wake up." In my sleepy state, I pressed my ears to the wall, and that is where the sound seemed to be coming from, almost traveling through the walls. "Follow the voice." I sat up on my bed and stood up barefoot. Feeling rather unsettled, I did what the voice said. Keeping close to the walls, I walked along the corridors for what must have been a couple of minutes. To convince myself this wasn't a dream and that I was not sleepwalking, I pinched my left thumb forcefully and let out a low yelp of pain. That was pretty conclusive in telling me that I was very much awake. Eventually, I came to another room within the villa, and the voice said, "Look inside." Then, there was absolute silence for a minute before I finally gathered the courage to peek into the room. What I saw took my breath away, and not in a very good way. The walls were covered with my posters from all my films. The good ones, the blockbusters, the bad ones, and even the obscure ones. It was arranged in chronological order, and I felt my head spin slightly, as it felt like a walk down memory lane into my career. Apart from the posters, there were also newspaper clippings of interviews I had given, and some photos from talk shows I must have attended. I was very slightly flattered, and mostly very creeped out. All of a sudden, the voice spoke again. "Look closer. This is where the story gets really weird, and almost beyond the realm of logical explanation." It seemed that whoever had put this up was not a fan of my later movies, the ones post-2010, and had crossed out my face in those movie posters. In the extreme right corner was a poster which simply could not have been there. For the very simple reason that it was from a movie that was still in production and had not been released in public at all. And yet, there it was. I could feel a cold shiver running down my spine and stayed awake for the rest of the night. The next morning, I called the tour guide back to the villa and asked him if anyone had put him up to this movie poster business. He was extremely puzzled, and while he knew who I was, he had absolutely no idea about the room and the posters. His surprise was very genuine, but all that did was add to the mystery of what exactly was going on. I also asked him about the last person who rented this villa. It was apparently the chief executive of some Italian football club who barely had any interest in movies. The second shock came when I visited that room again later in the evening. The wall was almost bare now. All the posters were gone, and it was like they were never there to begin with, so clean and pristine was the wall. All the posters, except one. The poster which should never have been there, because it had not been made public yet. A phrase was added to the poster now. "Forget this film and let it go." The voice whispered again, completely without warning, and I jumped out of terror. "Pay heed to the words, Thomas. It's for your own good." Again, a rather brilliant and strained silence. My brain, however, was anything but quiet, and I realized I didn't want to stay in this villa any longer. While on the flight back to the United States, I requested a call to the travel agency my agent had used to book this trip. When I mentioned the incident, or to be more precise, the two incidents, the person on the other end of the call asked me to describe the room. I did so, and what he said only added to the overall mystery of the villa. Apparently, the villa was originally built as a palace. Treason was rife in those days, and anyone who was caught betraying the king, and by extension his kingdom, was sentenced to life imprisonment within a rather isolated part of the palace. A large room where they were left to die. The room with the vanishing posters.